firstly been a beneficiary of your, coaching and mentoring in more than one organization, Nick. But for you yourself, looking back, have you had the benefit of a mentor in an organization? And how important is it to have one, particularly early on in your career, I would imagine, rather than later? What's been your experience?
Yeah, I think as you start your career, um, the mentoring is absolutely critical and essential. It's a little bit tough love is what you need when you first come into a bank. And I got very tough love from my particular manager. And those days we used to write memos and present them to the manager for review. And the manager, the first 2 weeks I was at the bank, the manager was just drawing lines through, giving it back. Wasn't good enough. Just straight line through it. And then gradually there might be one or two words which were not scribbled out. And then as I went through 6 months, almost the whole thing would be perfect, right? But really driving through, this is the standard that you need to get to be acceptable. You have to have the manager who's got that high standard and is willing to be actually quite brutal in driving you to that standard. So that was the first. The second, I think, has a manager got your back in a crisis, right? In a real crisis. And I certainly had personal experience in that devaluation I mentioned earlier, 37% in 1986, where I didn't manage it perfectly. It wasn't a disaster, but I didn't manage it perfectly. But my manager had my back in terms of my mentor. All part of the learning process. It wasn't one of those killer situations. And it was, when you've got the benefit of going halfway through your career and look back, you can see, it's just, these are just blips on the road, right? But you need someone who's got your back at those vital times. What I actually, and the other thing is opportunity. With a mentor can actually open the doors to amazing opportunities, which has certainly happened in my career in terms of various overseas postings. Came from mentors putting their head above the parapet and saying, this is the guy to do it. So I think the regret is thinking there's a time when you don't need a mentor. I think you need a mentor all the time. But the difference is when you get to a certain stage of your career, you become the mentor. You become the mentor. And that's what you do when you're a trainer. A trainer is effective when you're teaching. Actively, you're a mentor. I had a great mentoring experience, just to mention very briefly. I got a call from a guy in the Middle East. I don't want to reveal countries. And this person was going to apply for a treasurer job in a bank. Was not a treasurer. This person was in the dealing room and needed to very quickly master the skills to go in front of a central bank panel for the interview for this job, to be fit to do this job. So we did a 4-hour mentoring program, split the hour, 1 hour, then homework, 1 hour and homework, 1 hour, over a two-week period. Just before, and about a week after that, or more than a week, it's about a month after that, I got the email, the guy got the job. So, you can transfer the skills. You can transfer the skills and knowledge in such a way that they are really impactful on people's lives. And I think that's, in a way, that gives you more pleasure. Teaching, mentoring, give you more pleasure than making the big win in the trading room years back. That was a lot of fun, but it's a different type of feeling, isn't it?
And I'm also thinking that for somebody in that kind of position, they probably don't even know all the right questions to ask. So you really need somebody such as yourself who's able to then say, look, this is what you need to know minimally, and let's take you through this in terms of the skills and the knowledge in those areas. But look, it's a great segue to my next question, which is about your company, Augury Insights. Would you mind telling our viewers a little bit about what you do, the kind of things you'd like to talk about in particular? And the floor is yours. What would you like to tell us about Augury Insights?
Yeah, well, thanks. First of all, Augury Insights is one of 2 companies I have. I've got a consulting company, which is called FinTalk. And FinTalk is where I'm the technical advisor for the ASEAN Macroeconomic Research Office. I do various consultancy engagements with banks and non-banks around the region. Augury Insights is a fintech company, and it gets involved in training and simulations. And let me sort of elaborate on that a little bit. When we give training, we find that a lot of financial training is very, very boring, very dry, very dull. So our emphasis is on training using case studies and simulations. Now, one of the things we use in the simulation is we use something called a run the bank simulation. developed by Augury Insights. And in this simulation, you are competing against all the other delegates. And your objective is to maximize our ROE, maximize revenue, and to comply with all of the regulatory and internal limits, all of which are on a browser-launched computer-based training. During the course, we give the training which allows the delegates to have all the skills they need to be good at the simulation. And then we end the course with the simulation. And they see how they can compete against each other and what the results are. So that's one of the areas. We also love to do role play. And in role play, we basically have all delegates becoming an ALCO member. Some will be a CEO, head of consumer, doesn't really matter. And we role play 3 or 4 banks competing against each other and going through an ALCO and assessing how they're responding to the agenda that's set and the decisions that are required. So when you put it all together on these in this kind of framework, we've got case studies, we've got simulations, we've got role play, and they're all around making Treasury training more interesting and more impactful. Very much using case studies that are relevant to the banks in which we're training as well. So that's the main area that we're going into. Now, I did mention earlier fire drill simulation. That's a 4-hour program that we do with the crisis teams, where we actually run through a crisis simulation, which I said was integrated. We also do board training, which is board strategic risk oversight. Again, 4 hours. We take the board through in terms of the strategic risk oversight and planning, going through a bunch of topics which are very relevant to their positions, and individual mentorship. So that's really the full gamut, Francis, of Augury Insights. Very busy. Just this month, 3 gigs in Malaysia and all over, actually. I've been in Ghana, Joburg, Oman, all over the world with this training.
Thank you for that. One last question for you, Nick, if I might. Do you have a piece of advice or a word of caution for group treasurers or CFOs entering into 2026?
It's going to get rough. 2026, we've seen some massive volatility taking place this year. In fact, even the last couple of days. And it's not going to subside. We're going to have a lot more cyber-related activity, incidents, which I referred to earlier. Geopolitical is not going to get any cooler. So I think we're in for quite a few shocks going ahead. And I think the competition, you ain't seen nothing yet in terms of the competition. My one kind of real warning flag, CASA. CASA may be king, but the king may not be on the throne forever. We've got to kind of really defend that throne very, very diligently, because there's going to be a lot of attacks on CASA from competition.
Thank you for that, Nick. And I look, it's very hard to do justice to a topic like Treasury. And I'm certainly no expert in that, but I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. It always is a pleasure, interacting with you, Nick. And thank you so much for agreeing to come on this particular podcast. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Francis. Thanks for the opportunity.
Take care.